Hank is our resident expert in all things dysfunction of a team, everyone. He's the advisor for the Student Government Association, and he's the Senior Associate Director in the Office of Student Activities and Organizations. Everybody, let's welcome Hank Bowen.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Krista is saying that I am the expert in dysfunction or not, but either way, I'll take it. So hopefully, I don't know, there's a lot of folks and I can't see everybody. I don't know if any of you were here for the first session. We talked about the first two dysfunctions. Hopefully you've had a chance maybe to look at the video of that session. If not, I'm going to very briefly go over those first two. Let me get to, I think Andy was just saying that the buttons are now at the top. So I'm like, where are all the buttons at? So I'm going to show PowerPoint. This is not PowerPoint heavy, but I want to show you a couple things as we talk through this. So really, this is about conflict and accountability. The first two dysfunctions we talked about were about trust and conflict. And today we're going to talk about commitment. And then after that, in another session, we'll get into accountability and results. So this is based off the 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's by Patrick Lencioni. If you've not read the book, I do recommend it. I work with a lot of groups with it. Student government uses it every year as kind of a way to come together. So it can be done a couple different ways. If you've got an existing team that just needs a little bit of a boost, it's really good for that. If you have a group coming together, it can also be used kind of backwards. So not talking about dysfunctions, but how do you make a more functional group to start with? The books are very quick to read. He's written several books that I really like. This one is really good to use a lot, but there's another one that I like called Death by Meeting. If you've ever felt like any kind of meeting you've been in is just painful, I love Death by Meeting because it gets into kind of like why do people meet and what can you do to improve that. But he's got several another one that I'll talk about today is called The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. They're written as business models, and so they're kind of management books, but the principles can apply to any kind of organization, I think. And they're really easy to read because they do end up being about not just this theoretical model, but they're written as a fable, and so they're easier to follow because you're following along with the story, and then you get to the model. So, real quick recap of the first two. Again, that first one, the dysfunction of a team, is this absence of trust, and so we work on building trust, and that's all about kind of being willing to be vulnerable in front of folks, and being willing to put yourself out there, being willing to sorry, I had to move so I could see the chat. Being willing to put yourself out there, being willing to be vulnerable, but it's about sharing something about yourself with your teammates. And so, again, if you've not watched that video of the first session, you can do that, and it'll kind of take you through some of that. And also, I'd be glad to come in and work with any groups on that. But we do personal histories to learn a little bit about each other and be willing to share. Because if you have that trust with each other, you have this understanding that you're in it for the right reasons, and you just want your team to be successful. You're not a bad person. We all make mistakes. And so on there it talks about the fundamental attribution error. We sometimes have this thought that, when I do good, it's because I am a good person. But when I do bad, it's because somebody wronged me in some way. Somebody set me up for failure. But when other people do good, it's because they had a good environment. But when they do bad, it's because they're a terrible person. So we build this trust to start with. That's the important step that can't be skipped, because you have to be able to see that folks really are good people at heart. And then we got into mastering conflict. And people have this fear of conflict because they don't want to argue. We want to keep things nice, and we don't really want to get into all that. But that's why trust is so important. We've got to be able to express ourselves. We've got to be able to say, here are my thoughts. Here is my idea. Because if you're willing to put it all out on the table and not leave anything unsaid, then you're more likely to be able to work with people and not hold this grudge. Think about if you've ever been part of a group, even if it was a work team or an organization or anything. Have you ever felt like, and again, you don't have to unmute, but you can throw it in the chat or put the hands up or whatever. Have you ever just felt like nobody is listening to me? And so then how do I really buy in? And buy in is what we'll talk about today. How do I buy into what's going on if nobody really cares about my ideas? So conflict is very important. Conflict doesn't have to mean a negative thing. It just is about, we've had this discussion. We've put it all out there. And again, you can't have that honest discussion if you've not had the trust first. Okay, so you build trust, master conflict where everybody puts everything out there and doesn't leave any ideas unsaid, doesn't leave any challenges not made, just puts it all out there and do that. Yeah, I'm looking at Beth's comment in the military all the time. Absolutely. And that's one of the things where people, if you explain to people why it is we do a certain thing, they're more likely to jump on and say, yeah, I can support that, or I understand it. So I used to work in orientation before I came to student government, and that was a big thing where, if you came to orientation, obviously we didn't have it the same this year, but if you've ever been to that freshman orientation, you see students in those purple polos, the orientation assistants, all over the place. And it was my job to assign them, your job is to stand in this particular spot. And if I had just said, I want you to stand in this particular spot, it's July, it's 90-something degrees, it's hot, it's sweaty, they may just say, well, this is not important, I'm not going to do this. So it's more than just, here's your spot, stand there. I need to explain to them, when folks come off the bus in the morning and they take that corner, this spot is visible to them. And so I need somebody here so that when people turn that corner, they know they're headed in the right direction. And it's a simple thing. It's not necessarily, it's not necessarily done well by everybody, but that's why it's important. When someone feels that he or she doesn't feel heard, how can a person get their point across? And this is exactly it. That's where the conflict comes in. Too many people are unwilling to even put that out. So there's a couple answers to this. One is an okay answer. The other one is a difficult answer. The first answer is everybody has to be willing to put their feelings out there, and not everybody does that. The second answer is sometimes we have to decide that a particular organization or a particular team or a job or whatever it is not for us, because you can master that conflict all you want and you can try, but some people will not listen and some people won't get in. So what we're going to talk about today with this commitment, some people won't follow these principles and you have to decide, I'm out. And sometimes that's tough. Sometimes it's relationships and sometimes it's jobs. But that's the hard choice to make. So let's talk a little bit about achievement commitment. I want to talk about several things with this today. Again, I'm going to show you this. I'm probably going to turn this PowerPoint off here and just kind of come back to it in a little bit. Achieving commitment is all about, okay, we've put these things out there. We've said what needs to be said, and now let's get everybody on board with it. I want to clarify that this is not about consensus. We'll come back to that in a second, but commitment is not about everybody thinks it is the best idea. Not everybody has to, believe necessarily that it's the perfect choice, but everybody has to feel like I have put my thoughts out there. I have made my choices clear. I feel listened to. People have understood what I'm trying to say. We put it all out on the table, and we're going to go in this direction. Whether it's my direction or not, I can at least get behind it. Okay, so we're not talking about we get everybody on board and it's like, oh, we found an agreement that everybody. No, okay, not everybody is going to agree. Somebody's going to have to make a decision. That's going to go against what other folks have said. But is it a decision that the group can at least get behind and support? All right. The first problem with lack of commitment sometimes is that we don't really understand what it is we're committed to. What is it that the group is saying, yeah, this is us? And the first thing is the mission of the organization. And here's where it comes in tricky for student organizations sometimes. And I think this is the perfect year to talk about it, because how many of your groups, I won't say struggling, but how many of your groups this year are not really sure what to do in general? Just like, what is it that you are doing? Anybody feel that way? I know we talked to a lot of groups, and one of the big things they do is, well, we travel to this conference, or we do this. You know, I can think of like some groups that just, one of their big things is to do service trips, or maybe it's to do mission work. You know, we've talked about, Krista, what is it? Pirates Promoting Community Wellness that we've talked to. I don't know if anybody is here from that group. We've talked about, you know, some of these groups that travel to other countries to do medical work, and you can't do that. And so what is our purpose? And so that's where you get into this kind of operational purpose, and then overall, what is our mission? So I want to talk about these things, and then I want to come back to working on mission with you in just a little bit before we leave. So what is the mission of the organization? And that's kind of the first thing. But then after that, do people see themselves in your group's mission? And it's not that they have to be part of every function you do. It's not that they have to be, you know, part of every decision, but do people see themselves in your core beliefs? And that's what gets into, so the other book by Lencioni, The Four Obsessions, and I'm trying to see, I got this from Joiner today. So if anybody wants to read it, they've got 2 copies. I've got one of them. I'm going to take it back tomorrow. But Four Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive kind of walks through this key purpose and values of an organization. So sometimes our organizations, and you have to be honest with yourself, Krista and I see all of the organizations that are at ECU, and sometimes they are very old groups that have been around for a long time, and they have this very clear understanding of what it is they do. And they start, you know, a lot of groups start for a reason, because they have something they want to accomplish. Either it's related to the academic mission of a department. Some of them are related to, you know, a service idea. Some of them, if you look at fraternities and sororities, their core mission may be networking. It may be to build community, but they've got a kind of core mission. And I think most groups are like that. We also see some groups that come in, and it's very clear that this organization is designed to be what a person wants to put themselves into the spotlight with. Does that make some sense? Where I want to start a group because I want to lead a group. I've got a lot of ideas. I don't know if it was the first session of this or not, or, you know, I was talking to the College of Business the other day. I used to be a high school business teacher, which is a weird turnaround of careers, but I used to teach business classes, marketing and entrepreneurship. And I would have all these students that say, I want to grow up and I want to run my own business. Well, what kind of business do you want to run? I don't know. I want to run a business. So they just want to have something that they can say, I started this group, I ran this group. And everybody else, you know, that gets recruited in the beginning is like, okay, sure, man, I'll help you out. But what's the goal of that group? What's the mission? And in the beginning, other people can see themselves in the mission because they see themselves trying to, you know, they see themselves as, I'm here, my mission is to help this person start this thing. And that's great for the beginning, but then now you're, you know, sometimes when I see somebody said I'm in that group, you know, years later, sometimes those groups just fizzle out, and that's easy to do, and that's kind of the way it should be, honestly. Sometimes they stick around, and the mission evolves. Any group is going to evolve within the first little bit, whether it's the first semester or the first year or two. It kind of settles down. You may have a really good, strong leader, and then that group becomes successful. But then 5 years later, what is it exactly that our organization is about? Not what is it that we do, because sometimes we have groups that don't really have a clear mission, but they've got long-standing traditions. They do certain programs. If you ask them, what's your mission? What are you about? Oh, we do this project or we do this charity. But what is your group's mission? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Because sometimes charities close. If your whole group is about traveling somewhere and you're in who would have ever thought? I'm still 6-7 months in saying to people, would you ever have imagined that we were in this situation? But we are. So what is it that you do? What is the mission? And again, I'm going to get into that with you in a little bit. Because you may have a mission statement for your group and it's not really relevant. We've done that within our office, within student activities and organizations. Believe it or not, student government never really had a mission statement until recently. We kind of looked at what is it that is our purpose. So when people ask you, what does your group do? What's your group about? How do you answer that question in an easy way? And honestly, student government, that was not something that we could necessarily do. What is it that we do for the student body? What is our purpose? And they could tell you some things. Well, we put money into this, and we've helped with some transit buses, and we've done. But what is your purpose? What is your core belief? So we've really had to work on that, and I would suggest you do that too. So a couple of things we'll talk about with achieving commitment. The first is buy-in. Again, this does not mean that everybody necessarily agrees with it just completely. But buy-in is about this achievement of honest emotional support. Again, I've been heard. I know that the people that are making the decisions are good people. We've shared, we've been honest with each other. They have the best interest of the organization at heart. They want us to achieve our mission. We may disagree on this kind of operational step, but we all agree in the mission. All right. And so whether or not I think this is the right choice, I have expressed myself. They have listened to me. We have discussed it. I don't feel like there's anything left for me to put out there. Somebody, if there's like a tie, this part of the group feels and this part of the group feels, somebody as the leader is going to have to step in and make a choice. And then everybody has to be able, again, this is not consensus. Everybody else has to be able to say, I can buy into that. I can support that. I'm not going to actively try to derail that. And if it's something that you say, I can't support that, then you got to keep fighting it out. Okay. And that's where the conflict comes in. So buy-in. But then you see there's a sub-bullet there under buy-in. And think about if this has ever happened to you in any group that you've been in. I think this probably comes in with partners. My spouse and I maybe, or with parents. Commitment clarification. Has anybody ever felt like you agreed to something and everything was good, but then later it turns out that you are not all on the same page as to what you agreed to? So in this case, I'll use SGA as an example again. We may have a group, and we've got a group coming tonight, for example, to exec, and they want money for something. It is a great, I won't get into it, but it's a worthwhile thing. It is helpful for students at ECU. So I'll leave it at that. We may get into this meeting And what if somebody says, all right, let's give them, $500 to do this whatever project they want to do. And everybody's like, okay, great. And then, later somebody says, well, I thought we were giving them, up to $500, or I thought we were going to spend this $500 on T-shirts, but we've spent $500 on marketing. And sometimes we'll agree. So SGA gets not money, but we get this gift in kind stuff from Aramark. And so they'll give us, we can spend a certain amount without being charged for it with Aramark. And so sometimes people will come and say, we're doing this event. Will you sponsor it for us at $500? And the SGA folks say, if they need food, we'll give them $500 of this Aramark gift in kind. And some people think, oh, we're giving $500 cash for shirts. And some people think, oh, we're not really spending any money. We're just going to let them take some of our free stuff and it's all good. There have been times where that's not clear to everybody. And so later it comes up of, where did this $500 go, or whatever it is. And so I'll let y'all think of kind of examples of where that happens, but you've got to be clear. And so what I recommend is taking 5 minutes at the end of your meeting and just clarify, what is it that we've agreed to here? What is it that we are doing? And make sure that everybody understands the specifics. And it may seem like a bit much. It may seem like overkill, but it's how you kind of weed out these disagreements later where people say, well, I didn't agree to that. What is it that we have said we're doing? Krista summarized it pretty good. Take 5 minutes at the end of the meeting. What are we doing? Who is going to do it? Okay. Have y'all heard of the somebody, anybody, everybody, nobody story? So there's an organization that's got 4 members, somebody, anybody, everybody, and nobody. There was a task that needed to be done. Anybody could have done it. Everybody thought that somebody was going to do it. And in the end, nobody is the one that did it. What is it that we've agreed to? Who's going to do this thing? What is it exactly, just specifically to that? The other piece of that afterwards is clarity. And clarity is this removal of assumptions and ambiguity for a situation. But that's more than just the top team, okay? I'm guessing a lot of you are either officers in your organizations, or you're going to be officers, or you aspire to that. And you need to have this leadership team of your top exec folks for your group. You may have committees then, and so there may be some committee leadership, but whatever your structure, everybody needs to know what has been decided. And so when you get into clarity, there's the second one that is like the cascading communication. How are you going to get that information to everybody? Okay. Everybody in the organization needs to know what the commitment is. All right. So every group's going to be different. How is that going to happen? Are you going to send that out? You've taken your time to do your clarification. Are you going to put all that down and email it out to everybody? I don't love that, but with big groups, sometimes that's the only way it's necessary. We've had some examples where you got like the military as an example. That may be the only way to get it out to everybody, but it's best if you're really able to do it either face to face, which again, we're in this weird time, but thank goodness we're in the world of this technology where you can still do that, or on the phone where you can kind of give a chance for people to ask questions, express concerns, discuss it back and forth, to make sure that, again, nobody has been left out. Nobody feels like they didn't get heard. Nobody misunderstands. So you have this clarity, and then you push it out to all the parts of your group. So that's really that part. Just a couple things. Again, this commitment takes a couple different turns. The commitment may be tactical. It may be about how you're going to carry out the operations of something. So maybe you've got a big event. Maybe it's about, simple things like who is going to do marketing, who is going to be there for setup, what is the layout of the event going to be, anything like that. It could be, when you're talking operational, if you're doing something that's going to bring in money, it could be about where does that money go. So I'm part of a group outside of work that has done a big event every fall, and I mean for decades. And they've done that big event, and they've made a good bit of money, and every year that money stays within the organization. Okay. And then a couple years ago, we decided we've got money. We don't really need all this. That's not the mission of our group. Our mission is to serve other people. Our mission is to help others. So it doesn't make any sense for us to keep all of that. So we're going to take, a portion of what we make from this fall event, and we're going to give it out into community groups that need it. And I was not part of the leadership of that at the time, and so I can only speak from what I saw from the outside. There was a lot of confusion after the event as to, wait, what did we agree to give money to, and how much did we agree to give money to? I don't remember that decision. I don't remember ever talking about that. And some people left the group, I mean, pretty angrily. There were a lot of hurt feelings. There were neighbors, that wouldn't speak to each other. I mean, it caused a lot of grief for a lot of folks. And I don't think they cared where we spent it. And it's not that anybody had a problem with the groups that got money, but this little disagreement of, I just don't remember that. I didn't hear that. I wasn't part of that, led to this huge exodus of folks. And so you want to avoid that. Some people were asking questions at the beginning of what if you're not feeling heard. And I can't blame people for feeling that way and for deciding this is not for me anymore. And that's not possible for some folks. If you're in a job, we talk about the military as an example, you can't just get up and say, I'm going to leave. If it's part of a community group, I think for younger folks, younger than college age, it may be difficult, I think for teenagers to say, well, I'm not going to be part of this anymore because, maybe they're being pushed to do that. I also think in some of your cases, I can see mostly, hit the raise hands real quick if you're part of an organization, if you're representing them, or if you're just part of an organization that's directly tied to your major. I see several hands. The honest, just flat out honest answer for a lot of you, if you're working with an organization that deals with your major, that's not so simple, and I get that. And I don't recommend you leaving, because those organizations, that's why we push you to join groups. We know they are vital to success in getting a job, getting internships. That's why we push them. That's why we do what we do here. And so to just say that group's not for you, just you need to walk away from them, I get that is not the answer. I understand that. So how do you do that? Well, hopefully you can take some of this back to that group and push them to improve. And so I get that me telling you, just leave the group behind is a very simplified, not reasonable expectation. But the hope is that you can build it and then push other folks, to be better and to do better. Yes. So Kaylin, I'm reading your comment. It's important for a leader to have an open mind to disagreements and willing to adjust, and to have a clear idea of what these events mean to their members. Yeah, that's you've got to have a leader that is willing to listen, and it seems that's harder and harder today. I'll just tell you a personal story. I was feeling really run down today after some stuff over the weekend with a group that I'm part of and have several roles in. I just was feeling burnt out with some things. And so I did what probably I should have known better. My wife would have told me if I'd asked her, don't do this. But I posted something on Facebook about it, just saying, like, I'm not mad at anybody. I just have been, I'm struggling today. And I just want to let people know that it's okay to be struggling. And, I just, because I saw an article that was like, don't quit, don't give up. And so I posted it and I was like, hey, this is not about anybody but me. But I'm struggling. And if you are too, here's this thing that's very helpful. And immediately I got several comments from the folks that I said I wasn't talking about, but that I was talking about, just piling on more of it. And so, folks, there's this kind of just general societal ill right now of people unwilling to listen to people unwilling to kind of lay down this battle or this need to win. And that's sometimes what happens with leaders, that I'm in charge and I've got to win. It's got to be my thing. And that really pushes people away. It really turns folks off to that. And so you have to be willing to, adjust to that. You have to be willing to listen. And Beth, you're saying about not everybody's going to sugarcoat. Yeah. And you don't need to. You don't need to sugarcoat it necessarily when you're having that discussion. You need to be able to put it all out there, but sometimes it becomes just personal and not productive, if that makes some sense. So again, this commitment may be about tactical things. It may be about how to carry out something that you're doing, but it may really be about the core essence of your group. What are your mission? What is your value? What is the purpose of your organization? So I'll walk through mission statements here with you in a second. In addition to your overarching permanent mission statement, and as permanent as it can be, you may also have thematic goals. So you may have a goal for the year. Okay, so your organization may have a mission, and I'm going to hopefully help you through that. But you may have, so for this year, here's our goal for this year, and think about as that theme. For many of your groups, your theme this year, your goal for this 2020-2021 school year may be keep this group surviving. And I think that's where most people are. I've seen several comments in there that, everybody's kind of clueless this year. Absolutely. We're languishing. So your goal can just be, we just got to get through this year. We just got to maintain just existence. And that's cool. Next year, your goal may be, we're going to get back into competitions. Maybe your goal next year is we're going to this year we just tried to maintain membership. Next year our goal may be, all right, we took a back seat this year, 2021, 2020, 2022. The goal may be, let's expand membership, okay, and get back to some of that. So you can have kind of this year by year thematic goal as well. Questions about any of that so far? I've been trying to keep up with some of the chat stuff. A lot of great comments. Definitely check out anything that anybody wants to ask about kind of this commitment before I move into this. I have a little activity about how to do mission statements. All right, so let me move into this. There's a document that I work off of for this from a website, nonprofithub.com. I will try to throw that in the document, the download itself, into this meeting so that you can have it. I downloaded it. I can't find it online anymore, but I did download it from a website, so it is out there publicly to use. And so I'll talk about it and show you some examples of what it's talking about, but then I'll try to throw it in there so that you can have it as well. So crafting a mission statement, what I would say is that take everybody separately, give everybody a chance to kind of think about these things, and then break them up into small groups. This is an activity you can do over several weeks. Make sure everybody has time to think about it, but really you want to do some of this in person. Take about an hour or so to go through some of these things. So get everybody to answer one of these questions. If it's an existing group, you can do the first one. If it's kind of a new group and you're deciding, what is our mission going to be, you can look at that second one. But what does it look like when we're doing our best work? And what you want there is an actual example, a story, because what we call this is this storytelling exercise. Give us an example of when have we done our best work? What did it look like? And don't worry about whether or not it fits what you think is your mission statement or what you think is your purpose. When were you at your best? Okay. And write that down and have everybody kind of give you some examples. Or if you're a new group, what would it look like when we're doing our best? Have everybody do that. And then again, individually, and then kind of come together and share those in small groups, 3 to 5 people where you can share ideas. And I'll give you an example. So the example that they use in the document that I've got is a charity about water. And so one of their best examples was, in Rwanda, we got to help Bagina's family easily get clean water, which allowed the 4 children to focus on schoolwork instead of spending days sick from bad water and nights walking hours to carry back water from the dirty river. Okay, so that's an example. Somebody said that's when we were doing our best work. All right, so you get into your small groups and you craft kind of this kind of story and share those. And then identify the impact. So in that story, what is the impact that your group has? Look for any mentions of a specific person or a specific place and circle those. All right. Then figure out what it is that your group has done to make a difference or took action and kind of put a square around that. And then anytime something has changed for the better, any kind of positive results, underline that. And then you'll get a document or some statements that look like what you see on the screen there, where it's easy to see some of these pieces. Okay. So we're identifying the impact through our stories. Sometimes when we get into activities like this, or we're trying to figure out mission, or we're trying to figure out what is leadership and who are we and who am I, we get too theoretical and we get to, just concepts and all this. But think about actual occurrences. Think about the stories. When have you had the most impact as a group, or what do you think that impact would be? So start to identify that and then put them into a chart. Okay. What is our cause? Who or what is it that we are impacting? What is it that we're doing that's making an impact? And then what have we done? What results of that? And so for the example I showed you, you have one group that came up with one story, but then you may have several different kind of subgroups within your organization sharing this. They all kind of come back together, get everybody to tell their stories, and then put all of your examples up into a chart. And I would put it in the big either chart paper or on a whiteboard. If you're doing this through Teams, you can still do this. So there is a whiteboard function in Teams. There's similar things in Zoom and in WebEx. So whatever you're doing, and then you can still use this kind of way of doing it in that. Start to list all those things up into your chart so that people can visualize what that impact is. And then after that, you will start to notice patterns. Okay. Group those pattern things in together. Okay. So in this case, one story was about Rwanda, one was about Bangladesh, but basically the people that this group is impacted were developing areas, families and communities, and local economies. And so you start to see all these different pieces, and they start to make sense once you get everybody's stories out. And again, this is where it's important that everybody is part of it. Once you get everybody's stories out, you start to see patterns emerge, and you can kind of group those things. What are our actions? Okay, so then you you see this group was able to say our actions are about clean water and then sanitation. And then what is it that we are impacting? What is the result of our works? And so that could be we're creating, healthier communities or stronger communities. We're creating security, opportunities. For your group, it may be, so when I was in school here, and I did go to school here a good number of years ago. And so I was part of an organization for my major, like some of you may be also. Our calls may be the members, your members, you yourselves may be your biggest cause. You may be the ones that you impact the most, and that's okay if that's what your mission is all about. Your actions may be things like, providing scholarship, providing education, connecting with internships, interview skills. What are the things that you do, and how do you group those? So is it connection to jobs as a category? Is it training in the field as a category, whatever that is? And then what are your impacts? Students are able to find where whatever it is that your impacts are, that you kind of list those things out. Once you have that, let me switch over so I can read. Once you have that kind of done, pick out the pieces that you think kind of are the most important for what you're doing, and then get people to look at it, try out some possible mission statements based on the things that your group thinks are most important. And I will, again, drop this in, but let me give you what they kind of give are some of the things to remind you of when this. Don't get bogged down in word choice, okay? People like to nitpick the details of this word versus this word. If you can agree on the overall theme, and you kind of agree on the concept, kind of take a back step. Don't get bogged down into one meeting, because that starts to get just petty and back and forth nitpicking about a word choice. So don't get too hung up on that. Try to keep it short. Most mission statements that are really good are maybe 10 words or less. So keep it short, keep it simple. Have you ever seen a mission statement either for a campus office or a business where it gets really flowery and it's really long? It just is obviously that people put a lot of time into it. And I do think you should take it seriously. But sometimes I see groups that have these statements and they have all this flowery language, and I'm thinking, do you spend time doing anything, or did you spend all your time coming up with that mission statement? Say it out loud. Does it sound weird? You want to write it down, but you also want to say it out loud. It doesn't necessarily have to be short enough where you remember it for word all the time, but it should be fairly short that you can. But does it sound weird when you say it out loud? And then here's the one that I like the most. If nobody in your group would disagree with what you said, then it may be too generic. And Krista will remember when we talked about doing one for student activities and organizations. If you look at the Division of Student Affairs or all throughout ECU, you'll see that all these departments and offices have mission statements. And sometimes I'll read them and think that could be anybody from transit to the dining hall to the history department. They're very, very generic. And so, of course, everybody would agree with that. We're here to serve students, and like that's your whole mission statement. But what is it that you do? What is the essence of your existence, essentially? So you don't want to get cliched with it and kind of hide behind that too much. I would then take it, let a small group kind of craft it a little more, and then present it out to everybody. And then again, you need a final decision maker like you do with everything else. So one final thought on that, and then I'm going to kind of go over what these last two would be. Again, we're talking about achieving commitment, but commitment is not consensus. Consensus is going to lead to something that isn't really the best action for your group. It's just going to be what people are not going to argue with. Sometimes in life, You got to go for what's gonna. It may be upsetting some folks, but at least you're doing something. Okay, and sometimes if folks are upset, that's how you know you're doing something right. If you don't achieve this full commitment, this full buy-in, if you're doing things that are just going to try to pacify people and not kind of upset anybody at all, you're going to end up with mediocrity. Okay, so that's why, again, go back to the beginning. It's important that you have the trust of everybody, that everybody knows I'm going to say these things to you, but I have a good heart and I just want what's best for everybody. Okay, so trust, conflict, we get it all out in the open. Everybody's had their piece. We want something great. So this is what we're going to do. And we all commit to it. We buy into it. We communicate it out. All right. So that's dysfunction number 3, lack of commitment. In the next session, we'll talk about 4 and 5. 4 is about embracing accountability. I won't get into these too much, but embracing accountability is all about making sure that we're holding each other accountable and making sure that everybody's doing what has been agreed to do and calling each other out. Sometimes we just, if we follow the first 3 steps, it may be just that, we fell behind, we didn't get it done, but that we're accountable and that we hold each other accountable for that. And then in the 5th one, we're talking about results. And so, again, this is all about ego, and this is all about people thinking about, did I get my piece done versus did the organization's mission get accomplished? So we'll talk about those together in another session. That is achieving commitment for today. I'm going to stop sharing this so that I can see you all again. Bring you back. Any questions about any of that I can answer for you? Let me try to drop real quick the mission statement activity in here for you. I don't know exactly what that looks like. Hopefully it attaches. So that looks like it's uploading. Drop if you have a question. So I think that's sent in there, the mission statement exercise. If you can't get it, my email is bowenh@ecu.edu. I would be glad to talk with you more. I do this with a lot of different groups. I'd be glad to come in and work with your team if you want somebody to come and lead some of these as well, including some of the beginning ones about personal histories and the trust building. So thank y'all for coming.
Yeah. Let's all thank Hank Bowen for being here with us today, presenting.